Well, hello, friends. I hope that you're having a great day. I hope that it's a day that has been filled with peace so far and will continue to be filled with peace and joy for you. So, did you ever hear of the Leaning Tower of Pisa? The Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is located in Italy. I couldn't bring the tower into my office today because the tower is just way too big. However, I do have a picture here in case you're wondering. This is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And it is called the Leaning Tower of Pisa because, as you see, it is leaning that way. It does not stand straight. I've never visited it, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I know some people have, but one of the things I've always thought of whenever I hear someone talking about the Leaning Tower of Pisa is, what do you think? Yes, pizza. Yeah, I would much rather visit what I would call the Leaning Tower of Pizza. Don't you think that'd be much more fun? Absolutely, especially if you like pizza. But the Leaning Tower of Pisa, in a little which is a town in Italy, is named that way because of obviously it leans. And it leans because when it was being built, a mistake was made in its foundation. A mistake was made in its foundation, it began to lean. Now, the tower took over 200 years to build. They actually started it in 1174 and finished it in 1372. So this Leaning Tower of Pisa has been around for about 800 years or so. And it actually, I read that it leaned more at one point and they straightened it up a little bit, but they could never fully straighten it up. So even though it's still leaning, it has some help. There was some work done to the tower to support it so that it would no longer lean anymore. And a lot of people go and visit this Leaning Tower of Pisa. We'll talk a little bit about that tower again. So if you are watching these videos in order, you know that we have been talking about faith. And we have been using Hebrews chapter 11 as our reference from the Bible to give us some stories about some people who lived long ago and who their stories were reflected in the Old Testament of the Bible, and they were people of faith. And you remember that we have been saying that faith is being sure of what we hope for. It is being sure of what we do not see. Faith is believing that what God says he will do will happen. Faith is believing that God made the earth, even if we weren't there to see it happen when he created it. Faith is believing that there is orange soda in this orange soda can, even if we don't see the orange soda. We don't believe that it's water or root beer. We believe it's orange soda that's in there, and we have faith that when we drink it, it will be orange soda. So today, as one of our stories of faith, we are talking just a bit about a man by the name of Jacob. Now, Jacob in Hebrews chapter 11 is referenced in verse 21, and it says this: Jacob had faith, so he blessed each of Joseph's sons. He blessed them when he was dying, and because of his faith, he worshiped God, and Jacob worshiped as he leaned on the top of his walking stick. Now, why would they reference a walking stick in that one verse? What was so important about the fact that Jacob worshiped as he leaned on the top of his walking stick that that was included in the reflections on his faith? Because Jacob lived a life that was filled with faith, and there were many other stories about his faith. You may remember some of those stories, and if you have the time or the interest, in Genesis chapters 25 through 50, you can read more about the life of Jacob. You will remember that he was the son of Isaac and the grandson of Abraham, who we have talked about in previous videos. And there are some stories about Jacob that you might remember well. One I remember is the Jacob's ladder. The dream time he fell asleep and he had a dream and he dreamt about this ladder going up into heaven. We've talked about that. There's even some songs about we are climbing Jacob's ladder. You may remember the story that Jacob wrestled with God one night, or an angel, or God. We're not quite sure who exactly it was, but it was definitely a messenger from God if it wasn't God. And they wrestled, and they wrestled all night. And God finally touched Jacob's hip and made him lame. And then he gave him another name, and he called him Israel. So Jacob in the Old Testament is also known as Israel. And from him, the country of Israel came. In fact, Jacob had 12 sons, and they became the 12 tribes of Israel. So there's a lot of history in Jacob's life. Well, it turns out when Jacob was near the end of his life, he called his sons together to bless them, to offer a blessing for them. You may remember that we've talked in another video about the blessings and how it was important in their culture for the fathers to bless the sons. Well, Jacob had his son Joseph also there, and Joseph's sons, and so he blessed Joseph's sons, or Jacob's grandsons. And during this time of blessing, he asked Joseph to make sure that when he died, that when Jacob died, that his body would be buried not in Egypt, but rather back in Palestine, or the land of Israel as we know it now. And that is found in Genesis 47, verse 31. Jacob is talking to Joseph, and he says, "Give me your word that you will do it," Jacob said. So Joseph gave him his word to bury Jacob back in Israel. And Israel, or Jacob, worshiped God as he leaned on the top of his walking stick. There's that reference. So I have my walking stick with me today. Some of you may have a walking stick. You may have a cane or a crutch or a walking stick that when you go for a hike, you might use it to get over rocks. But sometimes when we lean on this, and you really can't see me fully leaning on it, but I am, we put our weight on this stick and it holds us up. If it's a good stick, it's going to hold us up. It's not going to break. It'll keep us supported. Jacob's faith taught him to lean into God. So in some ways, God was like a walking stick to Jacob. It helped him. I'm also thinking about that Jacob was a little lame because of wrestling with God that one time. And so maybe he used a walking stick all of his life. I'm not sure. But go back to that Leaning Tower of Pisa. What you can't see in this picture is the inside of the tower. And inside that tower, there are some supports that are holding it upright, that cause it to lean no longer. It will not lean anymore. It won't fall over. They can't make it straight, but it will not fall over. It's sort of like a lame tower. Just like Jacob was lame and leaned on his walking stick, the Leaning Tower of Pisa is also leaning on something to keep it strong, to keep it steady, to keep it secure. So perhaps this walking stick is referenced in Hebrews chapter 11 because it's telling us that Jacob's faith was centered on God, and he knew that God would support him, God would hold him, God would keep him upright, God would lift him up. And that's why Jacob was able to bless his sons and his grandsons, and he worshiped God as he leaned on his walking stick. He knew that God was his source, that God was his center, that God held him and kept him. And God can do that for you. In fact, I think he does. He keeps you upright. He helps you lean in on him. He supports us every day through his love, through his power, even in ways that we don't always understand. God is giving us strength and holding us up, just like a walking stick, just like the Leaning Tower of Pisa is being held up with supports. So we also are being held up by the love and the power of God. So I hope that you can live with that promise today, that God is holding you up. And I hope that you can live with good things in life, and perhaps maybe someday we'll build a Leaning Tower of Pizza here close to us in Lancaster that we can visit and take a bite out of it. Who knows? But hey, I wish you a day filled with peace and a day filled with God's presence.